A week ago, everyone was doing everything they possibly could to downplay Super Mario Bros. Wonder, call it disappointing, calling it just another Mario game, calling it a minor release for Nintendo Switch, calling it like, I don't know, the last major game on the console, right? A week ago, a ton of people were saying that. This week, now that everyone has played it, we're suddenly seeing people admit that the game is game of the year. It's one of the best games in the series, that this is a huge, huge, huge deal. And we shouldn't let this pass us by, right? We really need to acknowledge that the mindset that the series isn't popular needs to die, right? Because this is a narrative that's been circulating since honestly probably the Game Boy days, right? With titles like Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2, like perfectly good platformers that were rejected for simply not being on the level of quality of Super Mario World or other games at the time, right? Whereas Super Nintendo titles have become like iconic all-time classics, a lot of legitimately really good Game Boy games have been written off and forgotten for really petty reasons, right? There are probably a lot of games like Super Mario Land and Link's Awakening and Metroid 2 that you don't really see a lot of people talk about anymore. And a big reason for that is because of, the limited Game Boy graphical abilities and just how primitive those games were makes them kind of inaccessible to a modern audience, right? Like they aren't easy games to get into, but it doesn't make them bad, right? Like I was shocked, playing Super Mario Land 2 again on Nintendo Switch Online, how much I really loved it, right? And playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder, playing this game and seeing just how much content they managed to jam pack into this 2D Mario adventure, it really just goes to show you how strong the brand actually is, how strong the series actually is, right? And I think it's safe to say, considering what's happened uh, with how well this game was received, like it is going to be a strong contender for Game of the Year. And initially, that was something that a lot of people didn't see coming because 2D platformers were and have been something that were considered too primitive to be this successful, right? Like traditionally in the 90s and later, like people were steering themselves more to like more technologically advanced games, 3D action adventure games like Ocarina, first person shooters like GoldenEye, right? Games like Resident Evil 4 or The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, right? Which were really cutting edge, visually, just mechanically complex games, right? But like, I think in the new decade, this a really major trend that's been turning around is that people are not as impressed with these kind of open world games the way they used to be, right? People these days have an appreciation and a respect for the 2D platformers, even if the community, the hardcore gamers don't want to admit it's true, right? People have realized that 2D platformers have an appeal that no 3D platformer can reach. They are different genres with their different with different standards and different like focus points and they do things that the other could not possibly do, right? They are two completely different styles that are both perfectly valid. And as a result, it's theoretically possible for both of them to be great, right? And just have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Just have different like appeal to different people, right? Like playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I was shocked at how quickly I realized that yeah, this is way better, way more to my preferences than Super Mario Bros. Odyssey, right? Like the pacing was really good. Each level was distinct and unique. There was no padding. Like the power ups were really thought out and interesting. Like, I played this game and realized just like, yeah, this game is way more to my personal preference than Odyssey. Now, does that mean Odyssey is bad? No. Like, Odyssey has a lot of great things about it, like the original locations and just the all of the mechanics and all of the cool things about that game, right? Like, there are lots of things to like about Odyssey. But like Mario Wonder, I think, is really proving that just because a 2D Mario game is not a 3D Mario game, that doesn't make it worse, right? And I have to wonder, like, if this is going to cement the 2D Mario as a real industry like legend at this point, because I think a lot of people really had this idea that 2D Mario games were played out and that they weren't that popular and that they're not that big of a deal. Like when people started realizing that like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe has sold like 16 million units. New Super Mario Bros. U, right? If you account for like the original Wii U release has in total sold like over 20 million units, right? This game is like hugely successful, right? It was like the second best selling game on Wii U. It was clearly super popular. Like people realized this game was selling as much as it did. And I saw people initially try and like damage control this and like justify it as like, oh, this is probably a game that people buy for their kids that they don't actually play. I've seen people throw stuff like that out there. But with like the immediate popularity of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, right? The indisputable like enthusiasm and hype from the fan base, right? People legit calling this one of the best games of the year. Like I do think we need to acknowledge that mindset is wrong, right? It is completely incorrect. Like when you look at the grand scheme of things, when you look at what Nintendo is doing, like there is no denying that Nintendo fans love Super Mario Bros. Wonder. There is no denying that they love 2D Mario. There is no denying that this game like strongly outperformed Spider-Man 2 in every way, shape, and form, even if quite a few people in the industry don't want to admit it, right? We're seeing this now. We're seeing this play out again and again and again, where Nintendo Switch keeps putting out bangers, one after another, right? Even if, like, the vast majority of the audience don't play games like Cereza and the Lost Demon, or Fire Emblem Engage, or Advance Wars, or Pikmin 4, like, Nintendo still has games like Tears of the Kingdom and Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which are phenomenally successful, right? These are the best games of the year, right? Like, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind at this point that the game of the year uh, is going to be kind of a race between those two. And honestly, like after playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder, like I honestly think I might be pulling for that one to win, right? Like I might be pulling for Super Mario Bros. Wonder over Tears of the Kingdom. Like the idea of a 2D Mario game like winning game of the year in 2023 is a very very appealing thing to me, right? And I really have to wonder if Nintendo is going to be granted that honor by the industry. Like I have to wonder if it's going to be something that like people actually seriously consider instead of just writing off like they traditionally do. It is something that I find very very interesting, right? Uh, both games are great. I love Tears of the Kingdom. I love Mario Bros. Wonder, but both would be perfectly valid to be considered the best game of this year.